I am Céline, the author of Elle et moi. But today, Céline no longer has a face. Hers is the face of anyone who has been exiled from their own sacred space and who had to descend with courage and resilience into the shadow of their psyche to find the path to transcendence. This is not merely a testimony. It is not just a guide. It's not simply a memoir. It is a study of survival. The passage from the fusion that annihilates to the individuation that liberates. Let us journey to the core of the experience, where the expression of the self is the key that reopens the door to sovereignty. Presenting the first conceptual film by KingMwond Edu. Some relationships don't break you. They dissolve you. Slowly, silently. At first, it feels like a rare connection, an almost perfect mutual understanding, an obvious truth. Then, something shifts. You start adjusting, explaining, justifying, doubting your own perceptions. Without realizing it, you stop asking yourself, what am I feeling? And you start asking, what does the other person expect of me? And one day, almost imperceptibly, the boundary disappears. There is no more I. There is no more you. There is only an entangled we, in which you can no longer find yourself. What many call love is sometimes an advanced form of self-disappearance. And the most unsettling part, this happens to lucid, educated, and deeply self-aware individuals. Because this phenomenon is not just about emotion, it is about the very structure of the relationship and what we are willing to sacrifice to avoid losing the bond. Have you ever witnessed or experienced this silent shift? We talk a lot about finding ourselves, but what if you aren't lost, just fragmented? We often speak of finding oneself as if we just needed to come back to the right place. But there are moments when we don't get lost, we fragment. One part of you adapts, another goes quiet, yet another observes in absolute silence. And over time, what started as a survival strategy becomes a way of being. The real work is no longer about coming back to yourself. It consists of acknowledging everything within us that was built to keep existing despite the fracture. This is where a different kind of process begins. less visible, less praised, but infinitely more demanding. The one that requires looking straight at the mechanisms we ourselves have maintained. Not out of weakness, but out of necessity. Some call this shadow work, others have no words for it. But everyone who has walked through it knows one thing: you don't come out of it intact, you come out of it more precise. I used to think writing was more about telling a story. I was wrong. With time, I've come to understand that certain writings do more than narrate. They hold the trace of a state of consciousness. They preserve fragments of life exactly as they were endured, long before they were understood. They are experiences that only become readable in retrospect, events that, in the moment, seem to be nothing but confusion, pain, or silence, but which later reveal their deep psychological structure. Writing in these cases is not about embellishing. It's not about explaining things too quickly. It's about allowing raw material to exist with its contradictions, its blind spots, its naked truth. Sometimes what we think is a simple memory is actually a living archive of the journey back to oneself. And certain archives don't just ask to be read, they demand to be traversed. Some experiences pass through us. Others imprint themselves on our very structure. They leave diffuse traces, hard to articulate, often impossible to share in the moment. And then, sometimes, there is something else. A process that isn't just lived, but documented, almost despite oneself. Written fragments, saved messages, words laid down at the exact moment when nothing makes sense yet. Not to tell a story later, but to simply hold on in the present. Over several years, this forms a highly specific material, not a reconstructed narrative, an archive, a direct record of what it means to endure an experience without yet holding the keys to unlock it. With time, this type of clinical material becomes incredibly rare because it bypasses the filter of memory. It remains raw. And that is precisely what makes it difficult, yet invaluable to approach. Most books are written with the comfort of hindsight. This one wasn't. There are texts written from a safe distance, and then there are those born in the very core of the experience. No distance, no filter, no guarantee of understanding. They don't try to explain, they try to survive. To stay in contact with what is being lived, even when it defies all logic. This is the space where some specific writings take shape. Writing that doesn't protect, that doesn't correct, that doesn't reorganize reality to make it palatable. Writing that exposes, not to be seen, but because it has no other choice. That voice exists. It doesn't look at the experience from the outside. It is the experience. Her name is Céline. Céline is not a conventional author. She's the voice of the lived experience. As the subject of this 13-year phenomenological record, Céline represents the raw, unshielded psyche navigating the labyrinth of relational trauma, psychological fusion, and the arduous path to individuation. Her writing is entirely stripped of clinical detachment. It is the immediate, visceral transcription of a woman dismantling the external gaze and fiercely reclaiming her sovereign architecture. She writes not from the safety of retrospect, but from the epicenter of the friction. This foundational volume belongs entirely to Céline. She is the blank canvas, the witness, and the undeniable proof of survival. My logos was reborn by a piercing cry of pain, long buried in the rubble of my soul. I no longer authorized myself to speak, because speaking had led to my downfall. I had retreated into a mutism that seemed like eternity to me, but not speaking condemned me to paralysis. And when one is paralyzed, one can neither move forward nor retreat. One has no power to decide. One cannot evolve. No exit is possible, for the ordeal is still endured head on. I had to find a meaning. I could not suffer like this for nothing. There was necessarily a hidden pearl to be discovered, revealed to myself, and perhaps even to the world. I had to continue seeking in the heights of my soul for the significance of all this. I had not premeditated it, yet it had struck me head on, and the experience advanced of its own volition, like a preordained destiny. Yet I had fought with all my strength. Out of breath, I was about to abandon myself. But even abandoning myself was no longer sufficient. The pain would wake me. It did not want me to abandon myself, lost in a monotonous daily life, condemned to wander like a ghost in an unrecognizable frequency. There was necessarily an emergency exit. What was an emotional chaos, a tangled maze, could also serve as a coded labyrinth, if I could decipher its signs. So I wrote as if receiving revelations. I wrote without thinking. I wrote the very words that came to mind without ever striking them out, letting my ears perch themselves through these words. These words will still lead me to her in yet another attempt to deliver her the bird's song. But it was also this initiative that drove me deeper down. She did not understand the language of signs. She was still within lower scales of pain, where pain diminishes until it's no longer perceptible, and where the joys of life have replaced the calls of the soul. I was beginning to despair that she might never understand me, that I was condemned with her for eternity, until I realized that it was for me to decide my fate. My free will allowed it, even if I had not yet found the path, the method that will lead me to my liberation. Finally, signs, symbols, my body, my dreams, a word spoken unconsciously, a strong intuition, everything directed me subtly but persistently in the half-light towards the exit. Speech. It was necessary to speak, to awaken the Logos. It was necessary not to speak solely to one person, to the sleeping person. It was necessary to cry out the depths of my pain. It was necessary to summon the world and express myself in a universal language. And that is when healing began.